Hi there, welcome back to the Weekly Word. Got a neat place for you today. Those of you who are from the great state of Tennessee may not know it, but this is where the name came from. This is the ancient Cherokee capital that predates even Chota. That's most famous because it was more about when the whites were dealing and stuff. We'll go to it here up the road just in a minute, but we'll start out right here. Under now Tellico Lake was the Indian town of Tennessee. Sometimes people say Tennessee, but I think it's just the alternate spelling of Tennessee before it finally settled the way we spell it now with all the multiple N's and E's and S's. It was just Henry Timberlake came in there, and I think he wrote it down the way it sounded to him, and T-A-N-A-S-I, Tennessee. Not Tennessee, but Tennessee. It was the town of Tennessee, so the river took its name from it too. This was the Tennessee River before it was backed up into Tellico Lake here. In fact, it was the Tennessee River until Congress in later years decided they wanted the Tennessee River to go to Knoxville. So they changed the name of the Holston to the Tennessee all the way up to Knoxville, where the Holston and the French Broad runs together. And they started calling this one here the Little Tennessee. But originally, this was the Tennessee River, which came by the Tennessee town of the Cherokee, which is where our state got its name, from this town and this river. So that's a little interesting bit of trivia for you. We'll show you a little bit more footage right here, and then we're going to move right up the road just a little bit here on the Chota Peninsula and take you to the old ancient Cherokee town of Chota. Hey, we've moved right up the road here, probably about a mile or less by the road, to the newer ancient capital of the Cherokee, and the most famous one, because this is where it was at when the whites were doing most of their interacting with the Cherokees. By the time we come to history instead of prehistoric times, they have the TVA, or the state I guess it is, has this little monument right here, but actually the old mound was out there underwater, and it was a giant earthen mountain that was handmade by passing buckets probably over and over from the river, until over the years they made a giant mountain with a palisade around it, and on top of the mound was a big council house that would hold I guess hundreds of people, it sounds like. I'm standing beside the monument of Chota. He's buried here now, the great Cherokee warrior, but he wasn't always buried here. He was moved here in 1979 before they flooded the lake, because before Chota died, he said that he would like to be buried in the great mound at Chota, and they put him in his canoe for a coffin, and they buried him in that mound. Well, we had that written record, see, and when 1979 comes, they're going to flood the lake. They knew Chota was there, so they excavated him, and they moved him up here where the dry ground was. And they said when they dug him up, he was still wearing his spectacles and his knife on his side, and he was buried there where he'd been buried in his canoe so long ago, a couple hundred years previously or more. The interesting thing about Chota is it was one of the Cherokees' towns of refuge, they called it. The Cherokee had a system set up that if you were guilty of killing somebody or something, if you could flee to a town of refuge, that was a town of mercy, that nobody could touch you there. They wouldn't do anything to you as long as you stayed in that town. It's interesting to me because that's exactly the same thing that the Israelites had set up in the Bible. You can read about it. There were cities of refuge, that if the guilty party fled there, then he could plead for mercy, and as long as he was there at that place, mercy was there. Now, as a Christian, I read that in the Old Testament, and I realize that was God's way of showing exactly what we have in the New Testament, that the cross of Calvary is a place of mercy, that as long as we flee there by grace through faith, God doesn't hold us accountable for the crimes, i.e. the sins that we have committed against God. I hope by grace through faith you found Calvary's cross and you know Jesus. We'll see you next week on the Weekly Word. We'll find something else interesting around here. There's lots of them here in this good place that we live. See you next time.